Walaikum salam. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lauren, for joining us today. Over to you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me today. So can you all see my screen?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, great. That's great. One moment, sorry about that. Okay, so today we'll be talking about gameful learning. Okay, can you see the screen in full screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So if I go to the next slide, you can see this, right? I'm on a slide called outline.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, great. Okay, so my name is Lauren Franklin, and I'm an assistant professor at Air University. And I am talking to you today about gameful learning. So we're going to go through three parts. The first is an introduction, and I'll give you a bit of information about what gameful learning is. And then we'll talk about steps to gamify. So, how you can implement gameful learning in your own courses. And then we'll look at some example courses to really get an idea of how different people have used gameful learning in order to make their classes more gameful. Okay, so introduction. What is gameful learning? Has anybody heard of gameful learning before?
No.
Okay, all right. So
Is it
yes.
similar,
Oh,
ma'am?
go
Is it
ahead.
similar to gamification?
Yes, some people call it gamification. So what does gamification mean to you in this context?
I mean, incorporating different kinds of game elements into, learning, especially in this context, language learning.
Yes, yes, good. So that's exactly it. It's using techniques or theory from game design in order to create a class that has sort of the fundamental components that make games interesting for people. Uh, so that's exactly it. All right. So gameful learning is a pedagogical approach that takes inspiration from gaming and then applies it to learning environments. And it's thought to promote intrinsic motivation through requiring students to level up rather than losing part of 100%. And it also allows for autonomous choice on how to accomplish the goals of the course. So if you think of playing any kind of game, you start off easier and you work your way up, right? And as you work your way up, you gain more points, you go to the next level. And in a lot of cases, you have choice about if you want to play the game using one kind of strategy or another kind of strategy. So gameful learning at its basis uses the same type of approach. In other words, it describes the underlying structure and assessment system. Okay, so there are 4 key principles. The first is choice. The second is feedback. The third is freedom to fail. And the fourth is building up points from 0. So let's look at this table that compares gamified and traditional course elements, and it'll give you an idea of how those four key points come through. So the first row is about feedback. In a gamified course, students receive ongoing feedback as they work through activities. So they work through an activity, and while they're working through it, they're continuously receiving feedback, right? Whether they're doing well or not well. This is like a game. If you can imagine, maybe, I don't know what kinds of games you all play. Maybe you play many different kinds of games. If you think about a very simple phone game like Candy Crush. So as you're working through each level of Candy Crush, you can see where your points are at that level. So gamified learning can use a similar style of feedback, how much you've completed of that particular activity, perhaps. And this is compared to a traditional course where students receive feedback once learning activities have been submitted. So usually in a course, students submit an activity and receive feedback. And in a gamified course, you design the activities so that students can see where they are, right, while they're doing the activity. Okay, the next point is grading style. So gamified courses have additive grading, where the student starts at 0 and then works through different activities in order to accumulate points. And this is different from traditional grading, where we think usually you start at 100% and then you have to work to maintain it. The third point is monitoring progress. And so in gamified courses, students monitor their progress, perhaps through a leaderboard that indicates how many points are needed to move to the next level. So for example, they complete an activity that's worth 10 points, and they need 15 points to move to the next level and maybe unlock another activity that's worth more points. So they might need to do an extra activity, or they might need to do something else in order to get up to that level and unlock the next part of the course. And this is, again, different from a traditional course where students might monitor their progress by calculating how many points they need to maintain or improve their grade. Okay, so the next is grade prediction. In gamified learning, students can easily predict their grades based on the points they earned and the points available. I'll give you some examples so this will be more clear later on, but you can imagine you need 100 points to pass the course. Or let's make it more modest than that. You need 60 points to pass the course, and you have completed activities worth 35 points. So you know that you need 25 more points in order to pass the course. And this is different from the traditional course element of grade prediction, where students need to calculate percentages and take into account weighted assignments to predict their final grade. The next is student control or choice. And so in gamified courses, students generally have the option to complete a range of graded activities. So they don't necessarily need to do all one activity. They can choose different ones to complete. And this is, again, different from traditional courses that we're used to. The assignment structures can also be different. So students in gamified courses may have more opportunities to complete assignments at times they choose, and assignments can be interdependent. So one assignment might be needed in order to complete another assignment in this case. And finally, there's trial and error learning. So in gamified courses, students are encouraged to learn through trial and error and can recover a low score by doing additional assignments. So for example, when you're playing a game and you are learning how to play that game for the first time, you don't pass every single level every single time. Sometimes you fail a level and you have to try again. Or if you're playing a more complicated game, you might fail a level and then have to use a different route in order to get to your goal. So these are all elements of gamified courses. You don't need to use all of them to still gamify your course. So these are more like suggestions or guidelines, but of course we have our own parameters that we're working in. Air University has its own particular grading system, and so some things like grade
Dr. Lauren
prediction may not be
Franklin.
possible.
But
Yes. Yes.
thế rồi là phải
Sorry. Was there a question?
It's not a question. Somebody's mic is unmute. So please keep your mic mute unless or until you have to ask a question.
Okay. So yes, as I was saying, some things may not be possible, like grade prediction at Air University because we use relative grading, but other things may still be may still be implementable. For example, student control or choice, or assignment structure, or even trial and error learning. So you can think about which things are possible at the institution you work at, and go from there. Okay, so let's talk about whether this approach to learning is effective. So the University of Michigan did an assessment of gameful learning courses. They called it Gameful Assessment in Michigan, which is shortened to GAME. Right, and students said things like, it really kept me engaged in my work. Being able to see where I was at any given point made the whole experience more transparent and helped me to keep an eye on my grade. Another student said, I have never learned more in a more stress-free environment. Previous studies have also showed that gameful learning can improve grade outcomes depending on the context. And gameful learning is supported by 3 psychological theories. The first is self-determination theory. And self-determination theory is a theory from psychology that says that we have basically 3 basic psychological needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So autonomy is this feeling that we have a choice, right? And we are in control of our behavior. Competence refers to experiencing mastery and being effective in an activity that you're doing. And relatedness refers to the need to feel connected to others and a sense of belonging with others. So self-determination theory, those first 2 points of self-determination theory, autonomy and competence, are really boosted by gameful learning pedagogy. The second is expectancy value theory. And expectancy value theory basically says that people ask these 2 questions when they're deciding whether to do an activity. 1, why should I do it? And 2, am I able to do it? And that's called value. Value, why should I do that, is the value. And am I able to is the expectancy. So people weigh these 2 things when deciding how much effort to put into a task that they might need to do. And the third is achievement goal theory. And achievement goal theory is a theory that more or less says that people move through a process where they are learning how to differentiate between effort, task difficulty, and luck. And so people weigh these things, effort, task difficulty, and luck, when figuring out if they'll be able to achieve a goal. So gameful pedagogy is supported by these three psychological theories: that people are more motivated in certain situations and when they can accurately expect if they can complete a task and how valuable the task will be. Okay, so do you have any questions on this first part about what gameful learning pedagogy is?
If you could, if you could explain how to apply this self-determination theory in the gamification.
Sure. So self-determination theory basically says that people need to feel autonomy, they need to feel competence, and they need to feel relatedness. So by gamifying your course, you give them autonomy. For example, you might give them choice on which assignments they can or don't need to complete. Or they might have a choice on how they complete the assignment or what time frame they use to complete an assignment. So that's autonomy. And competence refers to mastering or being effective in one's activity. So if students feel like they're step-by-step mastering something, then they feel better. They feel good about themselves. And so these two things are kind of built into the idea of gameful pedagogy.
Right, thank you.
Sure. Are there any other questions?
Yeah. I'll just check.
Sorry, your voice is a little low.
Do you have a question, please? I think so. There's no question.
Yes, okay, let's move on. Okay, so we'll talk now about how we can gamify learning. We know what it is, but how do we do it? How do we make our courses more gameful? So there are 10 steps. Step 1, you define your learning objectives. Step 2, you decide your autonomy method, how you allow students to make a choice. Step 3, you think through unlocks, badges, levels, these sort of game elements. Step 4, you determine your assessment approach. Step 5, set up assignment type. Which types of assignments are you going to include or not include? Step 6, create assignments and assessments. Step 7, set and achieve levels and grading scale. Step 8, assign points. Step 9, review and launch. And step 10 is iterate. Step 10 means learn from one class and make changes that you think are needed for the next one. Okay, so we'll start with step 1, define learning objectives. So this is something that we have to do anyway in a course, right? Whether we're using traditional pedagogy or using other types of pedagogy, we need to define learning objectives. Learning objectives give us a better understanding of what goals we have for our students. And they allow us to make assignment choices that match those goals. And so this needs to be the first step because we can't plan anything else about the course until we decide what we want the students to achieve. So what makes good learning objectives? There are different types of learning objectives. You might be familiar with this. Knowledge objectives, skills objectives, and values objectives. So knowledge is what kind of knowledge the students will come out with. What will they know after they complete your course? Skills are what they'll be able to do after they complete your course. And values are all of those other things. What sort of social learning are they going to be able to do after your course? So when we are teaching a course, our course involves all of these things, even values. Even if you're teaching a language course, right? You still are imparting social values of some kind, or you might be imparting cultural values, or you might be teaching about a different culture. Okay. And there are ways to frame our goals in order to make them better, or our learning objectives, excuse me. So we call that alarms. Alarm stands for active, learner-centered, attainable, relevant, measurable, and specific. Active means that students must do something to prove they've learned, right? In a most basic sense, students must successfully complete a final exam in order to prove they've learned. There are also a lot of other things that you can do to measure active learning, and I'll send out these slides to you later on so you can check out this link. Maybe we can go to it. No, we'll go to it later. Sorry. Okay. The next is learner-centered. So course objectives should be based on what your learner's knowledge, skills, and values will be at the end of the course. Right? You don't want to have objectives that are centered around what you're going to do. You want objectives centered around what your learners are going to do. They should be attainable, right? So we should remember that our courses exist within a context of real life. Students are living their lives and doing all sorts of things. And they're taking a lot of other courses. They might be in extracurricular activities. They might have jobs. They might have families. And so we need to think to ourselves, are the goals that I'm setting for this course attainable within the context of students' lives? All right, the next is relevant. Are the course objectives relevant to the students' needs? Are they measurable? Can you measure whether your students met learning goals? So this means that learning goals have to be fairly concrete, right, in order for you to be able to measure them. And finally, specific. A useful learning objective specifies how a student's knowledge, skills, or values will be improved. So let's, I'll pose this question to you. According to the alarms criteria, which learning objective does not satisfy the criteria? 1, students will be able to identify the names of the most influential impressionist painters. This is an art history class. 2, students will use the formulas from Newton's laws to calculate the force gravity exerts on objects of differing mass, physics. Or 3, I will teach students the definition of supply and demand from an economics course. So which one does not satisfy the alarms criteria?
We have responses in the chat. That is number 3. Most of them are saying number 3.
I think I
Yes.
also think number 3 is not measurable. It's yeah, in terms of measurable, I would extend this notion as well. If you can correct me, if we understand measurable, that objective means that it should be timed. Means when you specify the time of the exam or the assessment, that means that that objective should be measurable during that time. So isn't it so?
Yeah, I think that's right. It's very difficult to measure whether you've taught students something, right? How are you going to measure from your
Sadiye
own
irshad
perspective whether you've
Sadiye
taught
Shmoya.
something?
Sadiye Irshad
Yeah.
Sadiye Shmoya.
And then on top of that, this learning objective also is not learner-centered, right? It's teacher-centered. The wording says, I will teach students, not students will understand or students will know or students will be able to write the definition of supply and demand. But yeah, so you're all exactly correct. 3 does not satisfy the criteria.
And Dr. Lauren, it is also not relevant to the students because this is relevant to the teacher that she will teach students.
Right. So the wording makes it not relevant to the students. That's very
Right.
true. Yes. Okay. So once we've set our objectives for our students and we've worded them in a way that satisfies that alarms criteria, then we need to decide on an autonomy level. So there are lots of different ways that you can give autonomy to your students to let them feel like they're making some sorts of choices. The first is autonomy through submissions. So, for example, you might have an assignment that where students need to look at the history of the game Ludo, right? So they need to research the history of the game Ludo, and this research can be delivered as a presentation, written paper, play, song, or any other method if improved by the instructor. So you've given students autonomy on what kind of submission they're going to do. They can choose out of these options or maybe another method that they think of on their own. I know a lot of you do this already, and students, you've probably noticed, have a lot of fun in these types of assignments, and they work harder in these types of assignments because they're more engaged and they seem to care more about them when they have more choice. So autonomy through submissions can be a really good way to add some gameful learning to your class. Another way to add autonomy is through assignment selection. So for example, you might tell students, you need to receive 1,500 points to receive an A in this course. They can be made up of any combination of the following: exams, 1,000 points possible; papers, 500 points possible; quizzes, 500 points possible; group project, 1,000 points possible; individual projects, 9,000 points possible. So this is, if students need 1,500, then if they do the exams and the quizzes, they can receive an A without doing papers, group projects, or individual projects. Of course, you might have to rework this somewhat, again, depending on the requirements or rules of the institution that you work at, but you can still use this sort of as a guideline that to remind yourselves that students are all different, right? They're all individuals and they have different preferences on what they feel that they're good at or not good at, what they enjoy doing and don't enjoy doing, what they're likely to spend time doing or not likely to spend time doing. And especially in a language course, for example, um, students that are weaker in the language that you're teaching might have a lot of anxiety about writing a paper, but they might be very happy doing a group project. So you can think about ways in order to reduce the anxiety of students so that the projects that they do or the assignments that they do, they're really taking time and working hard on them and getting invested in them. You can also allow students autonomy through collaboration or not. So you might tell them you need 8,000 points to get an A, and every assignment is worth 500 points as a solo assignment or 2,000 points as a group assignment. And this is because group assignments are riskier, take longer, and require coordination. So you can give students autonomy, whether they want to do an assignment alone or an assignment as a group. And depending on whether it's a group or alone, they receive a different number of points. So you can think about ways in which any of these could be implementable in your own course. You might use one or two methods and not the other. It's really up to you, depending on what you're teaching, but these are all suggestions. Okay. The next step is thinking through unlocks and badges. So in games, we often have something called unlocks or badges. For example, you need to complete something in order to unlock the next level, or you receive badges that can get you something later, maybe, or show some sort of achievement. And in many games, you can only fight the boss once you've finished off their underlings. So usually the way that games are set up is you start small and you build up, and then at the end of the game, you fight the final boss. And that's a really hard game battle, right? It's much harder than what's come before it. But you can only get to the boss once you have moved through all of these other levels and finished off all of the underlings, the lower level, the lower levels. And in a course, this could look like only being able to do certain assignments after other more basic ones have been successfully completed, right? So students can only do a final project if they have completed 3 or 4 more basic assignments, perhaps. And so the University of Michigan has created this this website called Gradecraft, and it helps people to create Gameful courses. And they have a trial version that you can use if you would like to set up a course and see how these different features might work, like unlocks and badges, in order to make the course more gameful. Then you can figure out perhaps how to implement it in your own course. Okay, the next step is to determine your assessment approach. So you might use rubrics. In rubrics, expectations are clear to students, which can save time and marking. And I found that this really works for me. If I give students the rubric in advance, and I say, these are the points that I'm going to be marking you on, or these are the types of things that I'm going to look for, then it makes it easier to go through their work later on and see, did they actually do this or did they not do this? It saves time in marking, and also I feel it makes marking a bit more fair because everybody knows what to expect. You might also allow resubmits. Sometimes we have the freedom to do that, and sometimes we don't. But resubmits give students the opportunity to learn from their mistakes, and it makes it safer for students to take risks on assignments. So you might allow a resubmit for a certain type of assignment, or a few assignments throughout the course, or one assignment throughout the course. It doesn't necessarily need to be all of them, but it can be if that's something that you feel is doable. And you can allow for choices. So more assignments are a way for students to recover points. So you could consider breaking up larger assignments into smaller components. Right? Say you have 4 assignments in your course, and they're all they all have multiple parts to them. So you can break down those into additional smaller parts, which allow students to maybe do part of an assignment in order to recover some points that they otherwise wouldn't be able to. You can also break a research project into several parts, with each step marked separately. Or you can use an unlock system, which we talked about a little bit before, where you have later components locked behind successful completion of earlier components. So you can't submit a later assignment until you've submitted an earlier assignment, for example. And you can also allow students to self-assess. So you can reduce the total marking workload for teachers and create opportunities for students to think about their performances in a new light by allowing them to self-assess. Of course, we as teachers have a very high a very large marking load. So I'm sure when you were looking through some of these, for example, choices or resubmits, you might have been thinking to yourself, oh gosh, how am I going to mark all that? So allowing students to self-assess, at least in some cases, may help in terms of reducing the marking workload for you. And it also lets the students think a little more deeply and introspect. So I hope as we go through these steps, you can see how those 4 key points of gameful learning are coming through, right? So working up from 0, giving choice or autonomy, right? These are, I hope that they're sort of obvious to you as we go through. Yeah. Freedom to fail and also feedback. So choice, freedom to fail, feedback, and building up points from 0. Okay. So step 5 is to set up your assessment type. So in this part, you want to list the types of assignments included in your course. For example, if you have a course called Video Games and Learning, maybe you'll have class attendance, reading quizzes, blogging, learning game reviews, learning from playing a game, boss battles, and team competition. And these might be your types of assessments. And so they can fall under the categories of broader assessments like assignments, quizzes, projects, but they're a bit more specific. Here's another example from a class Intro to Political Science. You might have readings, discussions, blogging, boss battles, group projects, conventional academic essays, and scribing. And again, they can fall into those other categories, but they're a bit more specific and a bit more tailored to the type of course that you are teaching. So looking at video games and learning versus Intro to Political Science, we see some different things. For example, in Intro to Political Science, we have conventional academic essays, which we don't have in video games and learning. Or in video games and learning, we have learning from playing a game, which we don't have in Intro to Political Science. So depending on your course and the contents of your course, you might have different types of assessments. They can be more specific in this way in order to help guide you through the next steps. Okay, so we're halfway through the steps to set up a gameful course. Are there any questions or thoughts so far?
We have one question in the chat.
Yes.
And if you could just, don't you think submission in various forms can lead to challenges in assessment? That refers to the things that you mentioned earlier.
From
When you talked about that students may submit their assessment in different forms, like in the form
yes,
of
yes.
So,
Yes. Yeah, so it can. It really depends. You wouldn't want to do that necessarily for every type of assignment, but for some assignments it might work well. So for example, there's if you're teaching communication skills, or I guess now it's functional English, your final project might be very open-ended, right? The students might need to have a project that has some elements in it, right? Like it has to be entirely in English. It has, all of the students have to play some sort of role, and you have to present something for 30 minutes, but what that is could be different. So maybe it could be a play, maybe it could be a short film, maybe it could be sort of like a talent show. And so those objectives are still being met, but students are given autonomy in how they meet the objectives. So it does take some thought in order to decide, is it possible for this assignment? Is it not possible for this assignment? And it probably isn't right for every single assignment, but for some, it can work nicely.
Okay, thank you so much. We have another question that is related to the attendance, that how can it be a type of assessment?
So at Air University, it's actually already built in, right? Students have to have 75% attendance in order to be able to sit in on the exams, or the final exam. So in that way, it is already an assessment. In other institutions, people might not take attendance regularly, or attendance might not have this kind of, I guess at Air University, you can kind of think of attendance as an unlock, right? You can only unlock the final exam if you have 75% attendance or more. In other institutions, professors sometimes have more choice about whether they take attendance or not. And so in those cases, you might use class attendance as a different type of assessment. But yeah, at Air University, it really is already built into the system that it's an assessment. You have to have 75%.
Thank you. Can we take another question?
Of course.
Okay, that's the question. Don't you think that repeated exposure to gamified elements create dependence on the rewards, which may potentially diminish intrinsic motivation in non-gamified learning?
That's an interesting question. So I think that we as teachers are always trying to improve our pedagogical our pedagogical activities, and so we are trying all different ways to make our classes more engaging, more interesting, and this is just another one of those ways to do so. I think that the idea is that this improves intrinsic motivation where there otherwise would not be much intrinsic motivation. And so thinking about it from the reverse, well, wouldn't that reduce the intrinsic motivation in another course? I think that I mean, I think that fails to take into account this idea that we're always trying to improve our teaching, and we're always trying to make our classes better. So yeah, that's my answer to that. I don't necessarily think that it would diminish intrinsic motivation in another course. I think that we have to do whatever we can in order to improve intrinsic motivation in the courses that we're teaching in order to have better student outcomes. But that's up for debate, of course.
Okay, thank you so much. So just let's continue. We'll take the rest of the questions later on.
Okay. All right, so step 6, we create assignments and assessments. All right, so when we're thinking about which specific assignments we're going to make, we need to think first, are they mapping onto our learning objectives that we made in step 1? And if it doesn't, then you might want to think, okay, do I need to drop the assignment? Or should I add a learning objective? Like, is this assignment actually showing that there needs to be another learning objective that I didn't think of before? So you need to think about whether the assignment matches or not, and if it doesn't, what you want to do about it. And then when you're creating the assignments, you'll implement your autonomy method that you chose. So maybe which assignments are required and which are not, or for each assignment, You'll provide clear descriptions so that students can make informed decisions about which they'll choose to do. So if you're choosing that you'll let students choose some assignments to finish out of a number of assignments, then you will want to give students information that helps them choose which assignment they're going to do. And then you'll create your assessment rubrics. So rubrics obviously are different with every single assignment, but you will have certain things based on the course objectives that you want to see in those assignments or that you're expecting to see in those assignments. So you'll create the rubrics accordingly. Okay, step 7 is setting achievement levels and grading scale. So in this step, you'll set the number of points students need to reach various achievement levels. For example, you will you'll perhaps say, okay, you need this many points in order to pass the class. And you can use whatever labels you want. So a lot of people use traditional letter grades, A, B, C, D. But other people might use labels like master, expert, moderate, and novice. And people might also use these labels in their rubrics. So if they have completed the assignment and it hits all of the criteria, it might be at the master level. If it misses a little bit of the criteria, it might be an expert level, and so on. So you can use whatever labels you want. And again, these labels, changing them may help to engage students. That's why it may help to engage students, or it may help students to sort of understand their progress from a different perspective. So calling something an A grade versus calling something master, it does have a different feel to it, right? And it might make students think about their work in a bit of a different way. Students should also feel a sense of progression and understand how to make progress towards goals. Right? So this is something that's pretty important in gameful learning, is that students should feel like they're progressing. They should feel like they're gaining knowledge or gaining skills or gaining something, right? And they should understand what they have to do next in order to continue to make progress. All right, so here are some examples from different courses. So there are 3 different courses. This is the first one, the first column, the second column is another course, and the third column is a third course. All right, so in the first course, A over here, they matched the level names to hierarchies that are relevant in the course. So this might be a course about video games and learning, right? And if it is, then they have matched these grade levels, A+, with a certain gaming system, depending on how advanced it is. And this is just sort of a fun way to give students some perspective on what they're achieving, or it could just be a fun way to think about grades. All right, B down here, they created a leveling system that helps students see progress before they fully earned a letter grade. So letter grade over here starts at F at 225,000 points for this course. And even below that, they have levels for what comes before that. We can also see it over here in the bottom of the third column. This is maybe a little bit easier for us. I'm not much of a gamer, so this is a bit easier for me as a non-gamer to understand, right? You have this many points, you're at the keep going level. You have this many points, you're at a third of the points are yours level. You're at this point, you're at steady progress. Here you're about halfway, getting closer, and over here you pass the class. So students can feel a sense of progression as they gain points even before they get to these letter grades. Okay, now we'll look in the second column. C over here. The number of points between levels doesn't need to be consistent. So the farther up the point scale, the larger the gap in this case, right? Over here, there's just a 5,000 point gap, 5,000 points, etc. And then over here, it jumps to 10,000 point gap. And then over here, it jumps to a 15,000 point gap. This mirrors games which get harder as the player builds mastery, right? So it's much harder to get an A from an A minus than it is to get a D from a D minus. And then finally, there may not be a need to use the full grading scale. So these points cap at 93 rather than 100. And this is just a decision that this teacher made because of, I guess, the way that the assignments were weighted, the number of points available for each assignment. So yeah, this in terms of points, you may not cap at 100, you may cap lower, or you may cap much higher and make the assignments worth different amounts of points. In any case, however many points the assignments are worth, students should be able to see where they are on this scale to some degree. For us, we can't say exactly what letter grade students will have because we have relative grading. So maybe using something like a leaderboard might be handy at an institution like AIR. Okay, next step, assign points. So once you have a full picture of your course, you'll distribute the points purposefully. So you can incentivize or decentivize the students. So for each assignment, you should consider whether it's formative or summative, right? Whether it's supposed to help them grow or whether it's supposed to measure what they've already learned. So formative monitors students' learning on a topic, and summative evaluates the students' learning on a whole unit of content. So an exam is an example of a summative assignment or assessment. So typically summative assessments are worth more, but there may be times when you want to incentivize formative assessments as well, right? Sometimes you may want to make it a little more worth it for students to do a formative assessment in order to make sure that they are making progress. And you might also consider how frequent the assignments are, how much work you expect is needed, and once you've done all that, you'll sum up all of the points for all of the assignments that you've listed. So as you can see, it's not totally different from a traditional course. In a traditional course, when you're planning the course, you're doing all these things too. The point of gameful learning is just to take a bit of a different perspective or look at the course from a slightly different point of view in order to try to engage students in a different way. And a recommendation for summing up the points is in order to help foster freedom to fail, right? Freedom for students to do something wrong. The assignment total should be a lot higher than the A level. Again, this depends on the institution. All right, so we're almost there. Step 9 is review and launch. So when you are reviewing your course, you'll ask yourself some questions. For example, are you enabling students to show that they have learned the material through a variety of media? Or can you add assignments that would allow this? So are you enabling students to show that they have learned the material? Are you enabling students to make choices about what advanced content they'll work on so they can explore their unique interests and goals? How are assignments distributed across the semester? Are they evenly distributed? Are they all clumped together? Do students have control over when they do work so that they can balance your course with their other courses and responsibilities? Remember, we said that students are living their lives, and so our course needs to be attainable within the context of real life. Are there distinct assessment pathways that involve a progression of content or skill acquisition? So do these assessments logically follow one after another in order to build a skill or learn some content? Do you anticipate that some students in your course will come in with a high level of knowledge on the content already? Where are the students starting? For us, as English teachers in Pakistan, this is a particularly important point because students come in at a variety of levels. So we need to prepare for that, and we need to know what we can do in order to make the course meaningful for students at many different levels. And when everything looks ready, you're ready to start your course. Finally, step 10, iterate. This is something that you can do whether you're doing a Gameful course or any other type of course. Regularly take feedback from students throughout the term and consider their feedback, right? You don't have to necessarily do everything they ask, but you should consider their feedback. You should consider what they are saying. And you should look through your design in light of their feedback and make whatever changes you feel are appropriate in order to balance challenge and motivation. Okay, so that's the last step. Are there any questions that have arisen since step 5?
We don't have any questions so far.
Okay, so this is a lot of information. I hope that you're not feeling overwhelmed. I really just wanted to give you an idea of how to create these courses, but of course, I will be sharing these slides. And so as you're thinking about future courses, you can use them at any time. Okay, so now let's look at some examples in order to really make these concepts concrete. Okay, so I am going to send you some links to example syllabi. I'm sending them in the WhatsApp. Sorry? Okay, so I've sent one link and let me send another one. Okay,
You may
so I've
send
sent,
it in the chat too, if you can.
sure, of course. Okay, I've sent both links in the chat. And let's just open up one of them here as well. Okay, so this first syllabus is for a linguistics class called Language and Discrimination. And this is from a teacher at U Michigan. Okay, so Let's read through the course description. This course examines ways language serves as a potential site of social statement and sometimes social conflict, particularly with respect to questions of race and ethnicity. We'll explore and investigate issues concerning multilingualism, regional and ethnically linked dialects, ideologies about language and language variation, linguistic diversity and language policy, hate speech and political correctness, and language-based discrimination in various public and private contexts. As we explore these issues, we'll also examine what we know about language as a human phenomenon, including the ways we use language to construct and reflect social identities and social group boundaries. We'll discuss how different aspects of social identity relate to language practice and use the critical lens of race and ethnicity to center most of our discussions. Because of this focus, this course fulfills the race and ethnicity requirement. Okay. So this is the course description. Now we know basically what the course is about. And then we're going to look down here at the course approach. So I'm just going to pick out some key points. So the professor or the instructor says, in this course, you'll manage how we assess your progress by choosing some activities and skipping others. You'll choose activities that have an associated number of points. Many of the activities you choose will also allow you to determine how much of the activity you want to do, with different rewards for different degrees of activity. Okay, so she says organizing the course in this way gives you a lot of freedom, but also a lot of responsibility. Except in cases of emergency, there are no makeups, redos, or extra credit. You'll earn points most easily by being critically engaged with the course material, with us and with your classmates, doing your coursework early in the term, and doing the low stakes activities as weekly homework. So she tells the students exactly what they need to do in order to complete this course, right? And in order to do well in this course. We reward engagement. Then she explains exactly how the points are accumulated. So there are 11 activities associated with earning points. Every activity except attendance is entirely optional. So for us, it might be something different, right? You have to complete a certain number within each category, perhaps. Some activities are low stakes and some are merit-based. You can earn up to 85 total points out of the 150 possible points for activities other than lecture activities. All right, so she makes it very, very clear how students are going to do these activities. She gives an overview of the activities here. She explains how to choose activities and gives some tips on the best way to choose activities, and so on and so forth. So it's a lot of information up front, but it's not very difficult to understand. Students will have this with them, and as they go through the course, they can continue to look back and say, okay, I see. There's going to be these types of assignments, and I want to do this one, this one, this one, right? Or I know that later in the semester, I'm going to have this thing going on, so I'm going to try to do everything in the first part of the semester, so that the second part of the semester, I'm flexible, I have more free time. Okay, so what are your thoughts on this syllabus? You're gonna have positive and negative thoughts. Do you think that this assignment, okay, let me frame the question differently. Which aspects of this syllabus do you think would work for your students, or which aspects do you think would be problematic for your students?
I think so. The choice that has been provided to the students, that could be problematic where you are asking that they can choose some of the things and they may skip some of the activities.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Okay.
can be a problem.
Sure. In what way? Yeah.
For example, if you have given but in that way, I think so. The job of the teacher would be more complicated. The teacher has to then design all the activities which are like weighing the same. So they should all measure the same thing. So maybe that would be challenging for the
Mm-hmm.
teachers, creating all
Yes.
those activities which are like uh, measuring the same thing and have got the same weightage. And then obviously they are different.
Yes,
So that they can
that is
choose
challenging.
from among themselves. So which one is the suitable for them. So
Yes,
that can be.
definitely. So
Mm.
you brought up a couple really good points. So the first thing is that yes, in the planning of these types of courses is there's a lot more planning, right? You have to have the course fully planned before you start it, and there are a lot of things that it seems to require a lot of elements. What I will say, however, is that this is probably not this teacher's first iteration of this course. And so as you continue to teach and reteach a course, you can add more elements as you go. So there are lots of elements in this course, but maybe when she started teaching it, there were a lot less. So I would say you can start to implement gameful learning in small ways in your course, and then slowly over time and over iterations of the course, you can build up, and then you'll have, for example, those rubrics in advance, so you won't have to worry about, okay, are these the same weight? Are these the same type of assignment? Right? If you do it slowly over time and over iterations of the course, I think that workload might be more manageable for the teachers.
Okay. So we have some comments like this seems well defined and can be very helpful for the students when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to accomplishing the course objectives. In most of the cases, the students don't have the idea regarding what they shall be doing and the way they shall be doing that. It makes it quite challenging for them to develop interest and set their learning objectives. This kind of plan helps a lot. That's a comment.
Okay, great. I'm glad you feel that way. All right.
Yes, you may ask. Okay. So we have Dr. Humera. She wants to say something. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Sadia, giving me opportunity to ask the question. Dr. Lauren, my question is about again, related to what Sadia highlighted. Um, See, she said this course is, according to me as well, it is well designed, but the choice of freedom to choose the assignment will may create problem for teachers. If you
Mhm.
could give me example that how students can choose, and then how it will be workable for the teacher to maneuver the situation when students are choosing different assignments. How would she mark them, and how would she handle this choice or freedom to choose assignments as a teacher?
Mhm. Mhm. Um, yes. So you might have, let's see, you might have a, okay, sorry, let me just get my thoughts together. So there are lots of different ways you can do it. So for example, you might have in your case, you might have 6 possible assignments, and students need to complete 4 of them. Which 4 they complete is up to them, but they need to complete 4 out of the 6. So this may be one way to give some choice in their assignments.
Hmm.
In this case, on this in this course,
Yeah.
she says
Can I say
that,
something?
oh, yes, of course.
Oh, okay. So one thing I would like to add is what we can do is we should not determine the weightage or the marks of those assignments or assessments beforehand. What we can do is we can have a choice for our students, and once they choose it, once they have done the assignments, then we can then we can give equal weightage to all the assignments.
Um, yeah, you can. I mean, the one challenge with that, of course, is that different assignments might require different amounts of work. So you might actually want to weight the assignments a little bit differently. Like, one assignment is going to be a little bit more challenging, so you could weight that more heavily than the other one. And then the other thing about so that's one way you could do it. But you're right. If you feel that the assignments are fairly equal, then you can. You might try to do it that way, as long as you make sure that students are able to sort of see their progress, or they're able to have some control over the outcome. Right? So they should know basically how the system works in advance.
We
Um,
have one question from Dr. Hamid.
sure.
Thank you
Yes.
very much, and thank you for sharing. Also, just would like to share that this is also some of my area which I'm basically belonging from the gaming side. So also the developing on the serious games as well. So just would like to share as the questions I've been raising. Um, I will share that we have developed few games and game-based learning as well for STEM education. What I mean to say for secondary schools like chemistry, physics, and so on. And however, we have adopted a little bit advanced technology as well, which is more towards when it comes to an assessment, it's on the game learning analytics. And we have created the framework as well, where the learning analytics can be done automatically as well. However, when it comes to the undergraduate courses, because the courses are very different, so I had a meeting like around 6 to 7 months ago. So there is a technology called, or a company called Eon Reality. I will mention the link here as well. Um, uh, if somebody would like to go on with something like this, they have this complete game-based learning analytics framework, and it's a software as well. Definitely, it's not a free, but there is a trial version as well. And some of your content which you have done as an PPT, PowerPoint slides, and then also some of the assignments that you are looking for, you can enter that into their platform, and based on that they will be able to suggest, as in generative AI, they will be able to suggest some of the elements which are available in their data set, as in character and so on. And the whole structure of their delivery, content delivery as in lecture, would be converted. Definitely, it's not 100% accurate, but you have to twitch a little bit and it will be available. So this is little information that I would like to share based on this discussion.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And that's very interesting. And I think that type of tool is also great because it does take a little bit of pressure off of the instructor as they're planning the course. They don't have to think of everything on their own. They can use these sorts of tools. If you don't mind leaving the link to that in the chat, I'm sure everybody would be very appreciative. Okay, so are there any other thoughts about this syllabus, or should we move on?
We have one comment by Abdul Moiz Khan that is talking about in terms of accessibility and inclusivity. We are more
Yes.
inclined towards completion of tasks rather than comprehension of the cardinal concepts, this proves to be one of the potential drawbacks.
Mm-hmm. Um, so that, yeah, I see what you mean. Even within completion of the task, there would be still room for there would still be room for assessing um, whether students are actually grasping the material. And so I think that if that's something in particular that people are worried about, it would be a very good idea to try to figure out how to bring in that other component, right? So you're right. The way that we have framed it in this discussion has been more about completing, but I think that you as the instructor have a lot of freedom to make it not just about completion, but about the quality of the completed work.
Okay, then someone raised, same person, Abdul Mois Khan, talks about that whatever we are talking about, that would give undue focus to the speed over mastery, working with speed rather than mastery.
So the idea is actually the opposite, right? Especially if you're giving students autonomy on when they complete the assignments, then the assignments might be more challenging and they might take time to do, right? And so I think really it's about what kinds of assignments. You have to be very mindful about what kinds of assignments you're giving the students so that you're not just measuring speed or completion. You're right that if one is not mindful about what kinds of assignments they're giving, then it could end up measuring that. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Yeah, it's really important to keep in mind those course objectives and whether the assignments are really measuring those course objectives. So there is another syllabus over here as well, and this is for a different course. We won't go through it in much detail because I think we'll finish up soon, but I just wanted to show you that this professor set up their syllabus in quite a different way than the first. And he explains the points and badges systems over here, and he shows how each activity will be marked. He talks about what kinds of different activities he has. So for example, in this section, learning from playing a game, the first one is required for everyone. And then he has the due dates here, and he has the amount of points. And he says over here, see, meets expectation points or above and beyond points. So this is one way that you might ensure that you're not just marking completion or speed, but you're marking quality, right? And then he has any unlock requirements here. So again, these are shared with you, so please look through them and you might be able to get some inspiration. Here's the same type of points levels system that we saw before. And about the assignments, he explains exactly how points are acquired throughout the course. So yes, it's kind of a long syllabus, so I would suggest reading through it in detail later. I think it can be interesting. All right. We've already gone through these. We'll just discuss some of these questions together now. So, sorry, we already discussed some of these. So when you're going through those syllabi later on, just think about these questions. For example, which specific parts exhibit gameful design? If you could choose one aspect that you might implement, what it would be, and what are some challenges that you might encounter. So we discussed some of those. You can continue to think about those later on. All right, and then the last thing I'll show you, and again, I don't think we need to go through it right now, but it's a course design plan worksheet. So I'll also share these with you. So we have this worksheet here that can help you in order to organize yourself as you're creating a course. So we have different steps over here. You can follow the steps. Step one is think about how your assignments may be grouped. And when you're developing the assignments, oh, I see. Okay. When you're developing the assignments within categories, keep in mind the number of times they may be offered. So for example, you might have 5 of one type of assignment and 4 or 3 of another kind. And this can encourage students to do a lot of different types of activities. Sorry, this is, let me just open this with Google Sheets so we can see it more clearly. Okay, so over here we have different types of categories and we can see how many points each one makes up. And then just move this over here. Okay, so unfortunately this is a bit difficult to maneuver on this computer, but we have total assignment points in course, percentages, and we can follow the steps through here if we can if we could see them better. I think my computer is just a little bit small for looking at this, but on your computer on your desktop computer it should be fine. Okay, so we have a way to work through these categories of assignments, and also a way to work through our grading scheme. So this is one thing that might help you if you are looking to create a course using some of these principles of game design. And then the other is this worksheet, which was the one that I thought we might go over, but yeah, I think we will skip it for now. It has the type of assignment, whether it's required or not. So of course you can make assignments required if you think they're very important, or if they might be required for some other reason, like exams. You can figure out how much student effort is required for each assignment. And then you can create points according to the amount of effort you think is needed, and also how much effort it'll take in marking, right? You can decide on the number of assignments offered. You can think about the point values, total points available, timeline for due dates, and any other notes. So yeah, I will share these with you. And then perhaps when you're thinking about your own course, or working on your own course, you can take a look at those and see if any of them help you. Okay, so to summarize, gameful pedagogy engages students through choice, feedback, freedom to fail, and building up points from zero. You can follow 10 steps to incorporate gameful designs into your courses, and you can make choices based on your students and the course material. And you can use feedback to improve every iteration. So as you teach, of course, it'll continually get better and better. All right, so that's all from my side. Any last thoughts, questions, concerns? Please let me know. I'll answer them to the best of my ability.
Thank you so much. The floor is open if somebody wants to ask a question or make a comment. I think so. We don't have much questions. Okay, how have you
Just
developed
one.
these PPTs? So that's the question.
Oh,
They are
so
nice.
thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
I used a website called Slides Carnival for the template, and then I made a bunch of changes or added images that I thought would be cool. Thank you.
Yes, it is. It is cool.
Just
Okay.
last
Uh,
question, ma'am. One last question.
yes. Yes, please.
Sometimes we actually hear from a lot of teachers that students learn in the best possible manner when they are enjoying it. But there's another a counter argument to that as well. It is not necessary that students, whatever students enjoy, they also like to learn it. The effective ways to learn are sometimes the ways in which the students don't like it, right? So this is also a counter argument. So how will you like try to balance between those two arguments? Like, have I
Mm.
made myself clear, ma'am? I should I explain it further?
I think I understand what you're
Right.
saying. So yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. So gameful learning, because of the name, it sounds like it's all fun and games, right? But in reality, that's not the case. It's there. You're right that sometimes assignments are not fun. Sometimes they're very challenging. Sometimes they can be a bit boring, and that's totally fine, perfectly fine, and it works into gameful learning pedagogy, because this is really a strategy that uses game design in order to structure your course. So it's talking about the structure of your course. The assignments themselves are totally up to you, and really, they might not all be fun. In fact, a lot of them might not be fun. So it's more about providing motivation by harnessing those psychological theories, right? Like being able to make choices about what you're going to do. You can make choices about doing two not very fun things. Like, do I want to work on my taxes today, or do I want to clean my house today? Neither of those are fun activities, but we have a choice. And so we have more motivation when we make a choice because we've made that choice. We have that autonomy. So motivation and fun can sometimes go hand in hand, but not always. Yeah, it's more about engagement than about fun.
Right. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, we have one question related to feedback. So can you please tell us more about comprehensive feedback as the learners ascend the game levels?
Okay, so feedback from, there's different types of feedback. So there's feedback from the instructor to the students, and there's feedback from the students to the instructor. So it's sort of a feedback loop. Right? So feedback from the instructors to the students is how the students are doing, right? How many points they've gotten out of the total possible points, if the assignment meets expectations or not, something like that. And then feedback from the students to the instructor is what sorts of things are working, what sorts of things aren't working, what sorts of things are students having challenges with, what sorts of issues students might be facing. So yeah, that's sort of how the feedback loop works. The instructor gives students feedback on their performance, and the student gives the instructor feedback on the flow of the course.
I think so. That was the last question with us. Yes, we have one more question from Nahid. Please, Nahid.
Thank you,
Jumna,
Dr.
please
Lauren.
keep your mic mute. Okay, I'll mute.
Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
Thank you, Dr. Lauren, for such an informative and valuable information. I would like to ask, in the beginning, you discussed about Candy Crush probably. So my question is, can we use Candy Crush for creating receptive and productive skills activities in gamified learning?
Um, mm, So I really used it more as an example of the underlying design, as in you start out at a very simple level and the levels get more complicated or more difficult as time goes on. And also as you're playing each level, you sort of see what your progress is at that level, how many points you've earned and how many points are required to pass that level. So using Candy Crush itself, I mean, I I'd have to think more about how to implement it in a pedagogical way. Uh, but you could take imagery from it in order to sort of make it. You could take you could take Candy Crush imagery in order to sort of make your course more engaging in that way, like frame your assignments with the same way that I did these slides, right? I made them sort of gamey in order to make you feel like you were engaging in a video game. Other ways of using it, I'd have to think more about it, I think. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
We had a question earlier. I missed that, I think. So, when you were talking about the three theories, so that refer to that question, the participant has again pointed it out. You talked about achievement goal theory, and there was another theory. So, can you please explain that with respect to their applications?
Sure. Okay. So, right. So, these three psychological theories, self-determination theory, expectancy value theory, and achievement goal theory, are all theories about human psychology that look at how motivated a person is to do a task, more or less, right? So people are more motivated when they have autonomy or choice. People are more motivated when they feel a sense of accomplishment. People are more motivated when they feel that it's a high value task and they expect that they can complete it successfully. And they are more motivated to do a task when they feel like completing it will help them achieve some goal. And so the idea is that gameful learning pedagogy takes creates a course that includes those components so people automatically feel more engaged, right? They feel more motivated intrinsically because the pedagogy is allowing for things like okay, sorry. Can you hear me? My BGD went out for a minute.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes.
Okay. So, so just to quickly recap what I was saying, I was just saying that the way that the course is designed, basically gameful learning pedagogy thinks about designing a course so that it allows for these things that we see from psychological research increase intrinsic motivation.
Okay, thank you so much. And now I would invite Dr. Farzana Masroor for the concluding remarks. Please, Dr. Farzana.
Uh, hello everyone. This is Dr. Farzana, HAD English Department. I would like to first of all thank Dr. Lauren Franklin for enlightening us with her such a knowledgeable topic that she has discussed with us. And also thankful because she is right now on leave, but still she gave us this time and opportunity to learn from her. So really thankful to her. Secondly, I'm thankful to the team of NRPU, the organizers of the event, Dr. Sadia Irshad being the principal investigator of the project, and then co-PI Dr. Maria Farooq, and the collaborator Dr. Homa, and myself also as co-PI. So we have been, carrying out these different seminar series in order to enhance English language teaching and learning by empowering it through technology. Secondly, and foremost, in fact, because I'm really thankful to all the participants here coming from various parts of the country, the teachers, as well as our own faculty members, and then our students as well, specifically the RAs of the project, Shah Mohammed and Shahzadi. Really thankful to them as well. And also, I'm thankful to Dr. Hamidur Rahman. He is the HOD Gaming at Air University for showing his interest in this particular seminar. So looking forward to such events in future, inshallah, and we'll keep on learning together. So thanks once again from my side.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lauren Franklin. Thank you, Dr. Farzana. Thank you, all the other colleagues and my dear students. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us today. It was a great learning
Yes.
experience. Special thanks to Dr.
And
Lauren.
thank you very much. And I also just want to thank all the participants. I'm so thankful for all of the interaction and great questions and thoughts that you all shared. So I'm very appreciative. Thank you.